Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Innovation is a cycle of experimenting, learning, applying knowledge, and then assessing success or failure.
Hello, I'm Trevor, and welcome back to the Knowledge Management e-learning video series prepared for the Philippine Red Cross. In this video, we're going to talk about institutional knowledge and lessons learned. A key piece of knowledge management is managing the lessons learned process. So then, what are lessons learned? Having a lessons learned process is simply a way of sharing what went well or what worked really good and what did not go so well or what we wish we had done differently. This is meant to reflect on the good and the bad of any team effort and capture it somehow. We're going to talk about this some more with some real-world examples from Daniel Coyle's The Culture Code. But don't worry, first we're going to learn something more abstract. Have you ever heard the terms institutional knowledge or institutional memory? Institutional knowledge or institutional memory describes when employees retain knowledge about past work and processes that they can draw upon in the future. Most of us learn so many things tacitly that are not explicitly written down. This makes you more valuable as an employee or volunteer because you quickly learn things that others will not know until they too spend more time with the Philippine Red Cross. Having an institutional memory can help you learn from the past. Well, what does this look like? An example of institutional knowledge that was lost came up earlier in the Bravo project during Manuela Peterson's volunteer management workshops. In those workshops, she showed this graph of the number of RC143 volunteers by year. See how when the data starts in the 2010s, it is high, then climbs even higher to approximately 400,000, and then comes crashing back down? Manuela asked many people at the different Red Cross chapters why this happened, and she got some very different answers. Some people said it was because all teachers in the country had been required to purchase Baal, or the LGUs paid for their membership. Some people told her it was because another national society, possibly the Finnish Red Cross, was trying to boost the number of RC143 volunteers and paid for their Baal out of their own funds. Manuela suggests that it is because of this graph, which shows the decline in volunteers that the IFRC expects internationally in the years following a disaster. Whatever the answer is, it seems to have been lost to the institution, which in this case is the local Philippine Red Cross chapters. A goal that we all share is to build up the RC143 program so it can reach a strength of 2 million volunteers across over 42,000 barangays all over the Philippines. It becomes much harder to achieve this goal when we cannot remember as an institution what worked well in the past and what did not in order to get to 400,000 RC143 volunteers, or approximately double the number that we have today. Institutional memory is key when working with volunteers. Volunteer management and convincing people to give their full effort to helping your organization in a beneficial way is something of an art form in gentle persuasion. It takes practice to be good at this. You can put some of this into explicit form, such as a volunteer manual, but much of this knowledge will remain in tacit form. This is why meetings for the sharing of lessons learned and tacit knowledge is so important when starting an RC143 team in a new barangay, or training a new employee who will deal with volunteers. Of course, such institutional memory is not only limited to volunteers. Finance officers have different tacit knowledge for how different types of receipts and expenses are handled. Cashiers and bookkeepers know different tricks to sell the Philippine Red Cross Maab memberships and how to get the same people to renew their memberships year after year. Another great example is proposal writing. I have talked to one Philippine Red Cross staff member about their experience with previously writing and submitting proposals to local government units, or LGUs, to receive municipal DRR funds that can be used to support barangay projects. The staff member knows not only how to write the proposal, but also how to make it align with the municipal DRR priorities, the time of year to submit the proposal, and more. These LGU funds could be the single most important key to sustaining the RC143 program after the internationally funded special projects end. How to properly apply for LGU funding is an important piece of knowledge for the Red Cross chapters, and it is inevitable that this staff member, like all employees and volunteers, will leave the Philippine Red Cross at some point. Unfortunately, some of their tacit knowledge will also be lost, no matter how strong your knowledge management systems are. However, the more regularly you meet and discuss and share this tacit knowledge, the stronger the institutional memory becomes, and the Philippine Red Cross will be able to recover quicker from the resignation or departure of employees. And the less time will be spent making mistakes or relearning processes that were previously known. Meeting often and sharing lessons learned is a great way to be proactive as a learning organization that is constantly trying to become better. Before beginning a project, discussing what worked well and what did not on previous projects can not only help you avoid past mistakes, it can strengthen your institutional knowledge, which you rely on, and help bridge the gap with employees leaving. Think of all the people who you know who used to be Red Cross employees or volunteers during high-end times, but have since resigned from the Red Cross. Was there one thing that any of them were especially good at? Did they have one particular skill or know something that you wish you knew? These are the kinds of things that should be shared amongst each other to make sure they are not lost to the Philippine Red Cross. Lessons learned should be captured throughout the entire phase of a project. Let's look at an outside example in the form of Pixar and its brain trust meetings. We know Pixar because they create great movies that we love so much, such as Toy Story, Finding Nemo, Monsters Inc., Cars, and The Incredibles. Every movie that Pixar has ever made was profitable, and they are almost universally praised by critics. However, Pixar president Ed Catmull has said, quote, "All our movies suck at first," unquote, and that, quote, "The brain trust is where we figure out why they suck, and it's also where they start not to suck," unquote. They call it a brain trust meeting instead of a lessons learned meeting, but this is essentially the same type of meeting, and the result is consistently great performance. However, there is one key difference in that Pixar brain trust meetings have a rule that only critical feedback can be provided by managers and not any solutions. This requires the project managers to come up with their own solutions instead of just using the ideas or suggestions that their bosses made. It is a way of empowering the people who are most involved and allowing them to address what should be done about the metaphorical olives in the airline salad. So, what are some ways we can address this at the Philippine Red Cross? I'm going to give some suggestions before we look at another real-world example. Have meetings often where these issues can be discussed at all stages of a project or work cycle. Jot a list down. Have managers meet periodically and compare their notes. Expand the list, but keep it accessible for everyone so they can add. This could be as simple as a notebook kept in the chapter. Another solution would be using a Google Doc with permissions allowing all users to access and edit it at any time. This has the added benefit of being a blank slate or empty page system that allows participants to decide what should be included, like the AT&T system that we discussed in the earlier video that was people-focused instead of tech-focused. Remember that documenting lessons learned in a written report or a journal to be passed among ourselves is a way of making our knowledge explicit and more easily transferable from one person to another or from one chapter to another. Between the tacit knowledge shared in these meetings or collisions and explicit knowledge put down on paper, this will ensure lessons learned are institutionalized in the chapter's institutional memory. Lessons learned can be kept amongst ourselves in one chapter or shared with other chapters to advise them on how they can go about a task better. Because ultimately, the lessons learned process is about turning your knowledge into wisdom to guide your actions and make the Philippine Red Cross more effective at helping people across the country. Let's look again at Daniel Coyle's book, The Culture Code. I personally was drilled on lessons learned processes and after action reviews in the Royal Canadian Navy, where we were sometimes asked to contribute lessons learned on a daily basis. Coyle likewise uses US Navy SEALs to show the importance of lessons learned. In the book, he describes a Navy SEAL mission that was poorly planned and executed, and almost led to the deaths of all the men. One team member, Navy SEAL Dave Cooper, realized that they made mistakes because people had been afraid to question their superiors. Cooper then said, quote, "From that moment on, I realized that I needed to figure out ways to help the group function more effectively. The problem here is that as humans, we have an authority bias that's incredibly strong and unconscious. If a superior tells you to do something, by God, we tend to follow it, even when it's wrong. Having one person tell other people what to do is not a reliable way to make good decisions. So how do you create conditions where that doesn't happen, where you develop a hive mind? How do you develop ways to challenge each other, ask the right questions, and never defer to authority? We're trying to create leaders among leaders, and you can't just tell people to do that. You have to create the conditions where they start to do it," unquote. One of the most useful steps Cooper's unit took was having a lessons learned meeting after every single mission. These were not led by the commanders of the unit, but instead by the junior enlisted men, with the goal of creating an environment where people could be honest about what went wrong and admit their own mistakes. Quote, "It's got to be safe to talk," unquote, Cooper said, with, quote, "You're looking for that moment where people can say, 'I screwed that up.' In fact, I'd say those might be the most important 4 words any leader can say. 'I screwed that up,' unquote." For Navy SEALs, often regarded as the best soldiers in the world, saying, "I screwed something up," is a big deal. And if they can meet after every exercise and honestly admit what they did well and what they did wrong, because they see it as being an important step in improving their organization, that is something all organizations can learn from. Whichever way you choose to conduct your lessons learned process, the most important thing is that you, as a knowledge management leader, ask everyone what went great and what went badly. When you ask this question and listen to the feedback of your chapter volunteers, drivers, finance officers, and every single person involved, you will likely get some of the best feedback that will inform you of things you didn't even know. And this is one of the best ways to learn and improve within the Philippine Red Cross. In the Google Classroom, I have also included a link to a video by project management consultant Jennifer Bridges explaining how to use the lessons learned process in your organization. So I hope you check it out. I've also posted the link to David Barrett's website with 5 tips for lessons learned. Thanks so much for watching until the end of this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.
There's a reason for the sunshine sky, and there's a reason why I'm feeling so high. Must be the season when that love light shines all around.